Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the new Netflix original series, Masters of the Universe Revelation, which is actually part one of a two-part series. Netflix released the first 5 episodes, I believe last Friday, and I sat down and binged them. I'm pretty sure I started them on Friday, and then I think I finished it on Saturday. And I'm just now getting around to recording the video, but I did want to get in front of you guys to give you my thoughts. It is kind of a big deal, kind of a big release for Netflix. You know, there's been this resurgence of kind of like rejuvenating or rebooting or continuing classic children's animated shows that have like a pretty strong cult following or a high nostalgia value. You know, we've seen it with Transformers, which I think has been done incredibly well, in the War for Cybertron series, which, side note, part 3, the final part of that, which I believe is called Kingdom, drops on Thursday, the 29th. And I will drop a video about, give my thoughts on that shortly thereafter. I will be watching that as well. I also have videos up for parts 1 and 2 if you ever want to, go look for those. But back to He-Man. It's executive produced, created, written. Well, I don't think Kevin Smith wrote all the episodes, but I think he edited or looked over the writing for each episode. He basically had final say, right? So, we know Kevin Smith had his hand in this pretty heavy. And from what I heard, his whole thing was to want to make sure that this met the needs of those of us who are big fans of Masters of the Universe and He-Man growing up, but still, now those of us, who were into that at that time are now significantly older, have different tastes in the kind of media that we consume. And it's a difficult job to take a property that was a huge deal to kids in the 80s and bring it into 2020 and 2021 in this case, but bring it into this decade and still make it so that it appeals to those same people 30 years ago who were watching it, or 40 years ago who were watching it, and make it so that they can enjoy it, but then also a new crop of people can come in and enjoy it. So I have a few thoughts about this first part of the series, and I'm going to kind of break it down the same way that I do most of my videos. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I like, talk about some of the stuff I didn't like, and then give a few thoughts at the end. So what I want to start with is actually, before I even get into the actual content of the show itself, I want to talk about the review bombing that's taken place a little bit on it, because I to a degree, I get it, right? And I'm going to talk about why this happened. But, to a degree, I get it. But I think a lot of this comes from the fact that people are so quick to want to give their opinion without ever having actually thought anything through, or did any research, or looked into what the future plans might be, things like that. So this is getting review bombed by the fans due to a pretty prominent absence of He-Man in this show. Now, the show's not called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and I'm going to get into, a little bit into why I believe that to be the case as well, but this just called Masters of the Universe Revelation. It doesn't say anything about He-Man in the title. And that, to be clear, I know that's not a good reason to not have He-Man in the shit, right? But I get that. But, there's no claim here that this is a He-Man show. We assume it's a He-Man show because it's called Masters of the Universe, and Masters of the Universe in the 80s was a He-Man show. But, to kind of review bomb this for lack of He-Man, it's like, I get that because you want to have He-Man in this He-Man show, because let's be real. You put out Masters of the Universe and you don't put He-Man in it, you're jerking the audience on purpose. But this is a 2-part series. 5 episodes now, 5 episodes later, and it's very clear that this is an arc, and there's a purpose behind this. And I think review bombing it childishly on day one shows that you put no thought whatsoever into whether or not this is actually worthy of being dragged like this. You just wanted to hop on there and get your opinion out first, because first is all that matters to most people. Get it out first. Fuck whether it's right or wrong. Just get it out. And then, hey, if it's wrong, it doesn't matter, because if it happened yesterday, it's no longer relevant. So, but now the fucking reviews suck from the from the audience side, and it's because people just wanted to give these knee-jerk reactions to the lack of He-Man and felt the need to punish Kevin Smith for that. So I don't agree with the review bombing in an overall sense, but I get it from the perspective of, if there's no He-Man in this show and it's called Masters of the Universe, you are jerking your audience. So I can see how people would come to that knee-jerk reaction, but it is still a knee-jerk reaction. So getting into the show, I'll get right into the important shit here. They do kill off He-Man in the first episode, and they kill off He-Man twice in this show, which I thought was pretty ballsy. Like the killing him off in the first episode meant nothing to me, because I'm like, okay, they'll bring him back. But then the show plays out, and I'm starting to wonder, like, are they gonna bring him back? But I'm thinking, like, that kind of shit happens. Like they'll kill off a major character, bring that person back later, not a big deal. They bring him back just to kill him again. That's what I thought was ballsy. I'm like, that takes a lot of bravery to kill this motherfucker twice. But the reason I feel like that happened, and to tie this into the review bombing, is because I think this show wants to build more of a more of an even footing team kind of vibe, right? And you look at like a lot of the superhero shows that we see on CW, stuff like The Flash, stuff like Arrow. Those shows were really big on team. And sometimes to its detriment, I will admit, oftentimes to its detriment. But because they kept expanding the team. Like I'm watching Arrow, not 8 random motherfuckers on one team show. but they're big on team. They want to build these teams out. And the Masters of the Universe has always really been a team. I mean, it was called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. But I think they wanted to kind of like build a bridge between the concept of like you got He-Man and sidekicks versus Masters of the Universe team where He-Man is just the leader. Like, look at it as a basketball team, right? You don't look at it as, LeBron James and all these other motherfuckers. Well, you did sometimes, but generally you will call, you'll say the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James is the star, or the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James is the star, something like that. Or a better example, Miami Heat and LeBron James is the star, not LeBron James and some randos and who just so happen to be Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. So like, I think the show wants to build something where it's like you have this team, this Master of the Universe team, and you can't give credibility to kind of like throwaway characters from the past. You can't give those characters credibility if you continue to make He-Man the constant focal point and the emphasis of it. So I think by bringing He-Man's involvement down, it allowed them to elevate the secondary characters. So that way when He-Man comes back, it won't be so much of a it's all on He-Man and then he's got help from his sidekicks. It can be a thing where it's like we are all working as a team, and each person has their role that is pivotal, and He-Man just so happens to be the leader and the person's in charge. So I feel like that's the direction it's going, and I'm not mad about that, Like I said, I understand people getting upset, but it doesn't bother me at all. So getting a little bit more into stuff that I like here. The animation is incredible. I love the way this show looks. It has a kind of like an anime kind of feel to it. I thought the animation when Adam turns into He-Man looked really cool. I thought that just continuously throughout the show, it just looks amazing. It's a really great looking show. I really enjoy watching it just from that perspective. Just looking at it, it's like, this is fucking cool. And I respected the fact that they put more effort into this storyline. I'm not going to go, we're already at 9 minutes. I'm not going to go too heavy into the storyline and what it is and whatnot. But, they make an effort into saying, okay, we're going to take He-Man off the board in episode 1. We're going to make this more about Teela. We're going to build up this team. We're going to even take it a step farther and have the good guys have to team up with the bad guys, aka Evil-Lyn. We're going to make them have to team up to kind of like address a greater goal that could destroy the universe, and we all have to work together collectively. They kind of did the same thing on Game of Thrones, like at least they tried to do that. Like, hey, let's all unite against the army of the dead as opposed to squabbling amongst each other. And that's kind of the direction that they took with this show. And I dug that. I thought that was kind of cool. So I like to see them take something like, those 80s cartoons were very formulaic. They had the same kind of deal every episode. Whereas now you have an opportunity to kind of like, put a little twist on that, give it a little bit more, especially because you're only doing 10 episodes, right? You don't have to work out a 300 episode kind of plan where you got to put some shit out every day that kids are going to want to watch. You can work on those 10 episodes and make it the kind of story that you want to tell. And I like the fact that they, went a little bit outside the box and didn't stick with the general formula. And we're like, we're going to have them team up with Evil-Lyn. We're going to take He-Man and Skeletor off the board in episode 1. And we're going to make you find interest in characters that you didn't find interesting or you didn't find as interesting back in the 80s. So pretty cool stuff there. They gave each character, time to build, like I said, build each of these characters up to make them more formidable once they come together as a team. I thought that was really good stuff. The voice cast is incredible. I couldn't even possibly, even if I could remember off the top of my head, run off all of the big names that pop up throughout the course of this, and doing some of these voices. The least recognizable voice is the guy that does He-Man. I don't know who this guy is. I think his name is Chris Wood. I don't even know who this guy is. I'm not going to say he's an unknown. He's unknown to me, but he's the least known person on here as far as I can tell. So really great voice cast on this one. Again, I'm not going to go into who's each person is, but great voice cast. So you don't have to worry about anything in that regard. Well, you kind of sort of do, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Ultimately, I think the storyline's really interesting. I like the fact that they kind of like retcon some shit to make this a little bit more interesting in present day. Like they had this whole angle where Castle Grayskull is really just an illusion to hide this Hall of Wisdom that has all of Eternia's secrets. Like I thought that was pretty cool. The idea that Castle Grayskull was just an illusion. I thought that was, nice little touch. It kind of reminded me of how they, I don't want to say they retconned, but they added more context and a little bit more depth into the Bumblebee character in the Transformers War for Cybertron thing that I just mentioned. So I like the fact that they're taking these 80s properties, taking what we're familiar with, and then adding some more into that to give that a little bit more layer, a little bit more context, a little bit more depth, and make these characters a little bit more interesting. Because that's the kind of effort you're not putting into those shows. Like I said, these things are coming out every day. They're for 6 to 8 year olds. It's basic. You don't need that kind of stuff. But you're putting out these mini series for adults who are fans of that stuff in the 80s to give these characters a little bit more depth and just context to their present day behavior. That's why when I say context, like that sounds out of context, but when I say context, I mean like giving characters background stories that make their present day actions a little bit more understandable. So you look at like Bumblebee and Transformers, and they give him some backstory. So then when you get that backstory, if Bumblebee makes a decision in present day in the show, you can relate that to how he came onto the team and to what he was doing before he joined the team. So doing that kind of stuff, I think is really good. Now, they didn't do this. They didn't do it to that degree on this show, but they kind of like that kind of stuff I dig, and they did that with Castle Grayskull. And there's probably some other stuff I'm thinking of. I mean, the other stuff that happened that I'm just not thinking of, but because I didn't take too many notes with this one, I'm like, it's a 5-episode animated series. I'm just gonna check it out, and if I feel compelled to do a video, I will, and that's that. So now I want to get into some of the things that I didn't really like. Obviously, the lack of He-Man is a little bit disappointing, but again, once I got a few episodes in and I realized what they were doing, it didn't bother me at all. They made Teela interesting, and they made Man-at-Arms interesting. They introduced new characters. They brought back everybody who we were accustomed to in the original series. So when you're doing that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, I'm thinking about He-Man less right now. So but hey, at the end of the day, man, Master Universe without He-Man is still ultimately at least a little flawed. You can do other things better to compensate for it, but no He-Man, it's still flawed. The voice stuff, I talked about the voice actors being incredible, and they are, but there are just times where it's very hard to separate some of the characters on this show from characters they've done elsewhere. Mark Hamill voices Skeletor, and I'm telling you, he just came in and he just did the Joker. He didn't even he didn't try to change anything to make it like, maybe Skeletor would do this, or maybe he came in and he did the Joker and he got the fuck out, and that was a little distracting for me at times. And granted, like I said, they knock out Skeletor in the first episode too, so you don't have to contend with that for very long. But yeah, I'm watching this, I'm like, this is the fucking Joker. I don't know, like he didn't even try to do something different. Like I can understand doing the same voice, but like the same saying the same types of things with the same inflections, like I feel like you could take the Skeletor dialogue and put it in Batman in the 90s and it would be fine, and vice versa, because he just came in, he did the Joker, and he got the fuck out. So that was a little bit distracting. And I don't hold this against Lena Headey, but it was really difficult when you have Lena Headey's voice combined with a evil, well, I'm not gonna even call her evil because she doesn't generally play that role throughout this first part of this series, but her name's Evil-Lyn, so hey, what can I do? But what was called with one of the bad guys? When you put Lena Headey's voice with one of the bad guys, you're gonna have a hard time separating her from Cersei Lannister. And there's times where Evil-Lyn says stuff that sound very Cersei-ish, and again, that's what makes it harder to differentiate. When you have Skeletor saying stuff that you feel like the Joker would say, and you have Evil-Lyn saying stuff you feel like Cersei Lannister would say, and they have those same voices, it's really hard for me to look at. It's really hard for me to see Evil-Lyn in this character instead of seeing Cersei Lannister if she's saying all kinds of like Cersei type shit. And the same thing for Skeletor. It's hard for me to see Skeletor if all I'm hearing is the Joker, both in voice and in actual content. So that was a little bit of a knock for me, that I didn't feel like they brought anything unique to that. I kind of feel like they just mailed it in, and it's like, you know, Lena Headey's been doing Cersei forever. Like, I'm just coming in and do Cersei. And, you know, and Mark Hamill's done 8 million different voices over time, and he just came in and was like, I'm going to fucking do Joker, and I'm going to leave. So that bothered me. And then the lack of the original music. I feel like the music is, I think, one of the best parts of the original series, and to not incorporate that in any kind of way whatsoever, is to me a mistake, and a pretty big one, actually. And it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't affect the content of the show, but at the end of the day, you want to drudge up those feelings of nostalgia. And one of the things that I associate most with it is the music, and they just said, fuck it, we're gonna do something. And whatever they did it wasn't even like, hey, let's make a different song and hope different music and hope that really takes off. No, they did that. Whatever they did, I don't even remember. It fucking sucked. Like, they didn't even have like intro music. They just had Davos talking. Davos is the guy that voices Duncan / OG Man-at-Arms. Is I think his name's Liam Cunningham. It's the same guy who's Davos on Game of Thrones. They have him just speaking the same kind of stuff that happens in the intro to the original cartoon series. So yeah, I didn't like the lack of the original music. That really irritated me, probably more than I think they expected it to. And then a couple of thoughts just to close out. There's a really funny scene in the first episode where Tila is coming up to Duncan, and she's being made the new Man-at-Arms, and she's really happy. She's like, thank you, father, or something like that. And he's like, I'm so proud. And Adam's dad says something like, fatherly pride must be nice, or some shit like that. Like, oh man, I hope to one day be proud of my son. Like, it was terrible. Like, man, that was cruel to do in front of the whole kingdom and shit. Like, man. I really like, again, when I talk about not necessarily retconning stuff, but adding context or adding additional things to the lore. I loved how they added this Preternia place that is almost like an afterlife, and there's like previous He-Mans in there. I thought that was super cool. I'm like, oh, there was other He-Mans before Adam. Like, oh, that's fucking awesome. That was actually probably one of my favorite parts of it, was like adding in stuff like that into the lore that can now become canon. That like there's this purgatory with previous dead He-Mans in it. Like, I think that's really cool. Like, I really dig that. I thought that was a super great idea. I like the idea of Skeletor winning at the end of this first part, and winning in a fashion where it's like, I'm not sure how. Like, you can kind of sometimes see how the good guys can get out of this predicament. This is one of those ones where I'm like, I don't know how they get out of this one. But really good job there. And I really liked how some people knew that Adam was He-Man and others didn't, because that made for a great scene after they kill off the He-Man character, where the king and his mother are mourning He-Man. And we know, obviously, that Adam is also He-Man. And we see the mother, like, overly mourning, right? Because we know that she knows it's He-Man. She's overly mourning, like, man, like from the king's perspective, people are like, man, it's just, I get this He-Man, but shit. But the father doesn't understand, or doesn't know, I should say, that Adam is also so he doesn't understand that he's also lost a son. And they do a great job with bringing that information to light and having him react to it, especially for somebody who just told his son he wasn't proud of him. But but they do a great job with the reaction to that too. So I really thought this was actually pretty entertaining. Like, I put on Facebook that it had a lot of problems, and it did. Like what I mentioned with the voices, and what I mentioned with the lack of He-Man. Like, I see why people are upset about that. It had issues, but all in all, I think the good outweigh the bad. And it is a pretty enjoyable, fun watch. It's quick. It's like 2 hours to get through the 5 episodes. And I'm going to watch the second part, and I'm going to come on here and talk to you guys about it. So until then, I will see you. And in the meantime, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you're an OG He-Man fan like I am, and you watched it in the 80s, what did you think about this version? Which I feel like everybody who watched it was an OG He-Man fan. Side note, they have an after show on there where Kevin Smith interviews a lot of the voice actors who were on it. There's a part where Lena Headey says that of course she was a He-Man fan when she was a kid. I do not fucking buy that at all. Lena Headey does not strike me as somebody who's watching He-Man in the 80s. No way I believe that. But hey, she's kind of obligated, right? Because it takes us out of it if we love the show and we feel like she's just like, yeah, I just checked in to do a voice. Like, I don't know what the fuck this is. I don't care. Like, if she says that, we're going to be looking like, kind of shit is this? She has to make herself out to be a fan. But like that just was not feasible to me. I don't believe Lena Headey was a real fan. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys whenever part 2 drops. Peace.